All right, and that is the conversation Wahiga Mora is having at the Greenhouse Mall on along Gong Road. Wahiga, over to you. A lot of reaction coming through on Twitter.
All right, Trevor, thank you so much for that introduction and that story as well. And of course, when you look at fatherhood, some could ask, what does a fatherhood crisis looks like? And that's what we'll be discussing right here today during our Citizen TV Town Hall. We are live from the Greenhouse Mall, and you can engage in this discussion. 22422 is our SMS line. You can use the hashtag Monday Report. Talk to us. You know, is Kenya in the midst, in the grip of a fatherhood crisis? And what does a fatherhood crisis look like? That's what I want to pose as a question to my panelists right now. We've got a full panel and full audience as well, all keen to engage on this particular discussion, and we'll be talking to all of them shortly, myself together with Mashiri Makapombe. But let me now introduce my panel to you. I'll start from my far right there. We have Wale Akinyemi, who describes himself as a passionate African and a proud father as well. Wale, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us on the Monday Report. Next to him is Dr. Carol Chakua, a psychotherapist and a parenting coach and a founder of the Being Parenting Group. Welcome to the program. Next to her is Simon Mbevi. He's the founder of Transform Nation, that's run a program known as Man Enough, for those who may be familiar with that program. Simon, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Mylene Kamuro, she's a lawyer, an entrepreneur, a writer, and she told me not to forget to add this, a mom as well. Marilyn, karibu sana. Welcome. We have a slightly extended panel here today. Let me also introduce Ian Bogua, thespian actor and teacher. Ian, welcome once again. We'll be asking you the tough questions today, and not you asking the tough questions. And last but not least, Wanjiko Kamau, quite a long title, which I've summarized to an educator. Wanjiko, thank you as well for joining us on the program today. And Simon, let me start with you, because you were quoted in a newspaper article recently with the title Fatherhood Crisis. Is there a fatherhood crisis in Kenya? And if there is, how will we know that?
I think that what we said came out of research that we've been doing for the last year and a half, 2 years, and our interaction with a lot of young people and also older people. And what we've heard from most of the people, I mean, I've been in many groups around the country, and what we get to ask them is, how many of you would say, after just describing a good father as one who is connected with the children, who is working with them, who makes time for them, how many of you would say you have a good father? And it's been 20% and less of the people who have raised their hands. Most of the others would say that they don't have a father that they know about. They've never met their dad, or their dad passed on, like mine passed on when I was young. Or they would say that they have seen very little of dad. There's one who said he has only talked once with the father. And another research showed that we did a research for about 2,000 fathers, and an average father from that group spent about 18 minutes with their family a day.
18 minutes with the family per day.
So being underfathered, very little of dad. He shows up, then he leaves. He's like a guest or a visitor at home.
Okay.
But very little of it. And then lastly, there are those who said, we don't like our dad. He's either violent or abusive, or not available at all, just misbehaving in one way or another. So unfathered, underfathered, misfathered. That's what made us feel there's a crisis.
There's a crisis. Miley, let me bring you in. Are we blowing this matter out of proportion? You know, we live in a reality where single-parent homes has become normal, has become the order of the day. Are we blowing this matter out of proportion, in your view?
Well, first of all, I'm not even sure that there is such a thing as a single parent. I think we've come to define parenting in a very odd way, and even for mothers, fathers who are bringing up children as the sole provider, there are lots of people around who help parent. And I think that while there is definitely something we have to think about, it is more important to me that we are tolerant of different models of families, and we don't imagine that everybody has to grow up in a particular way, and that there's only one way that we can do this, and only one way that it works right. And to make sure that as we have this discussion, that we're not shaming men and women who have chosen differently, and allowing them that they can still create connections with children. Because I think part of the way we have this conversation structures it so that, especially for men, they're left out. There's nowhere to cut. There's no walking back, right? There's so much shame attached to walking back that even if you wanted to have a connection with children later on, and we all make mistakes. I mean, we're human. I mean, there are times in your life you can come to a realization and you wish you had made a different choice. But I worry that we're having this conversation in a way that doesn't give men room to walk back, that doesn't give us...
To walk back to their family?
To walk back to make connections.
To walk back
right?
to make connections, okay.
Because I think the thing for me that's important here is that people have meaningful connections. And that doesn't always mean that you like the people you're related to. But the meaningful connections, and that we have tolerance for different models of families.
That's very interesting, and I want to go to Wale with that as well. So is that a gospel that society should be preaching now? Because when you talk about fatherhood, in a sense, it talks about one particular model of family or parenting. But Marlene has introduced a different component that we need to accept, that as a world, times are changing, and the traditional form of a family might never be the same again, if I can use an expression like that. What's your view?
I think we run a risk of putting ourselves in a box. Because as Africans, even when the physical father was not there, there was an uncle, there was a brother, there was someone. Many of us in the African context, where many people were raised not necessarily, or they got the father vibe, not necessarily from their biological fathers. And then another thing that I think we need to be careful about is this. Yes, there is a fatherhood, there's the fatherhood crisis, we have the statistics and all that, but don't let us forget the millions and millions of people that were raised and that turned out right and were raised by a single mother. All right? So I think we need to doff our hats for those ladies that were able to raise their children. We have programs in Madare, and I interact with a lot of kids, and those ones that escaped crime, when we found out what was behind it, they had a strong mother.
Okay.
So I think we need to celebrate that also.
Okay. Celebration, don't discriminate, are some of the points I'm getting here from the panel today. But Dr. Carol, let me come to you. We have had stories, though, from children who've grown up in single-parent setups, even though we've agreed we won't use that word here today, of the challenges they faced, stigma, discrimination. How might this affect their lives, when they grow up? What are the challenges in regards to that?
There is stigma for sure. And for me, how I want to look at it is children need a certain environment for them to thrive. Mm-hmm. So whether it's parenting, whether it's single parents, or a parent who is alone, or a whole society from the village setup, what we need to look at is what are those elements that create a good environment for children, because those are the things that will make the children thrive. So it's the connections we are talking about. It's a parent who is well. It's values. I think that from an African perspective, we have very strong people who came out, but that was because there were values that were there, and everyone was actually aware that these values are there and we are following them. So people used to read from the same page. So even as we are raising our children now, we need to go back and ask ourselves, what are those elements that are important to actually help children thrive and be able to pull out from those.
Okay. I want to bring in Ian Bogo on the next question and just find out from him. Simon Bevy, I beg your pardon, alluded to the fact that there could be a crisis of sorts, judging by the kind of feedback they got when they did that particular survey. But there are those who say that if there is a fatherhood crisis, it is because men have refused to call out other men for their irresponsibilities, for not carrying out their duties as they should. In your years of watching, of being a father, of watching fatherhood, of watching the evolution of fatherhood, how do you respond to those who say that men need to call each other out in this particular manner or aspect of life?
I do agree that men have abdicated their role and they have let other men who are doing wrong things just get off scot-free. It's a high time that men stood up and corrected each other. I always tell men whenever I talk to young men that you should have at least one friend who you can call upon whenever anything goes wrong, or when you feel that you're going to get tempted. If you go out, you have that one friend who you can call and tell him, Guy, please come and collect me, come and take me home. Yes, we are watching other men do bad things and we're doing absolutely nothing. We have abdicated our roles.
We have abdicated our roles. Finally, let me get to Wanjiko in before Mashirima gets the first question. Wanjiko, should someone from the Ministry of Education listen to this conversation, compile all the points and inject it into the syllabus? Is this something that should actually be formally taught? Some of the points that will come out here today and the issues around fatherhood, families, the way families have been set up in the past, but the changing faces as well. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I think so. And I'm going to ride on Marilyn's comment, being tolerant of the different types of family. And for the very basic fact that society is changing. It's changing how we were brought up, or how the children are being brought up today. And even in schools, a lot of things are not in terms of discipline. Discipline has become something completely different. Before, most people, if you did wrong, you were punished. Now the teacher cannot punish the child, say anything. So at some point, where do we draw the line at saying we need to help our children? Because they're growing up with no sense of right and wrong, at least I think. And unfortunately, and this is a touchy topic, but we have tended also to veer so much on the girl child and left the boy hanging. But he's also growing up. So what is he growing up to be? So we also have to pay attention to the fact that if we're saying we're changing, it's for both. Let's not look at one side and negate the other.
Let's not look at one side and engage the other. Okay, just before we get the first question, Mari, let me come back to you. So when you hear, and you've said no discrimination, let's be tolerant of the different ways in which families are being set up. When you hear of schools that will not take in children who are from perceived single parents, what are your thoughts about that? And is there anything in the law where one can challenge a school like that? And I want you to now put on your legal hat.
My legal hat.
Yes.
But, well, first of all, what I'd really like to talk about, because I'm having less and less faith in the law as I get older, which is probably not a good thing. Is what are the values that educational institution is promoting? I mean, the values are exclusion, it's intolerance, and these tend to often be religious institutions. It's intolerance, it's exclusion, it's superiority, because essentially the message is that we, the ones who are in two-parent homes, we're better than those people, right? And that creates the stigma that we're talking about when children are out there in the world. And children didn't choose their parents, right? So I think for me what is more important as a society that we have to think about, and I think again it's going back to connections, right? We have to start thinking about what are the values that are underlying behavior, right? And I understand that religious institutions and educational private institutions may want to set up their own rules, but even as parents we need to be asking ourselves, do I really want to send my child to a place where they're essentially telling them that we don't think everybody's the same?
But it's where it's perceived they'll perform the best.
And why will they perform the best? Because we're actually creating a mentality around who these children are, where they have a talented 10th kind of perception of themselves. They are better. They are the ones who will save Kenya, right? So they will never see leadership or talent coming from Mathare or Kibera or a single parent child, right? And that's dangerous, because it means that what we do is we set ourselves up as a society so that what we have is we're looking at all these people who we've said, you guys are the ones who are supposed to do it for us. And these people have been brought up in a way where all they know is, listen, there are certain things that if you do wrong, like God forbid, get divorced, your whole world can collapse. So you'll do whatever it takes not to get divorced, including be horrible, be abusive, abuse alcohol, drugs, all sorts of things, right? So I think we're sending the wrong messages, and it's because the values are wrong.
Okay. Let's get some questions in before, Simon, I give you a chance to respond to that. Mashirima, kwako sasa.
na Mwahiga kunradhi kwa hilo, lakini baadhi ya jumbe ambazo zinaingia, kuna wale ambao ni kana kwamba hawafurahi kile kielelezo ambacho kimeachwa na baba zao. Kipkoech Sang anasema, I never had a father figure in my life. Life was always hard. Never known who my dad was. I think that really affected my life, but thank God I made it. If I ever find him, or if I ever find you, I'll just tell you, so it's you. Lakini kuna baba hapa ambaye anasema yeye ni kielelezo chema. Engineer, tueleze jina lako kamili na comment yako ni ipi leo?
Mimi naitwa Engineer Paul Duo Keige. I'm very proud of that name Keige because having been a product of a father who was tough and very responsible. So I am very proud to actually, God rest his soul in peace, to be a product of a father who was focused and knew where he was going. And even me and my siblings, we are very proud of that. On the same thing, I am also becoming, you know, the way we create continuity. I'm also a father, I am a husband. I'm a father of 2 boys. One is a doctor, the other one is an engineer. The good thing is that the engineer is 10 years and the doctor is 3 years. Why do I say my 3 years is a doctor? Because as the father, I prophesy, I speak good of my children, just like my father did, so that they can move knowing that they are being supported. So I am a very good supporter of present fathers. And the other thing I would like to emphasize is that let us also create self-improvement in wherever we are. Whether you are brought up by a single parent or by the community, as we are known African, or as yourself, understand who are you. Then understand what improvement are you doing to yourself. Then pass it over. Let us have generations improving. And that way we will be creating a society that is very good. Thank you.
Asante sana. Wacha sasa nimpatie nafasi Ben Mutahi ambaye yeye anasema kitambo kidogo mahali ambapo babake hakuwepo kulikuwa na tatizo. Maisha yako yalibadilika kivipi?
Okay. Wazazi wetu, baba wetu wengi hawakuwako. Shauri ya kasi, tunawashwa nyumbani, wanakuja mjini kutafuta hela. Lakini tuliweza kulewa na mama zetu. Na mwishowe hata sisi wakati tulipofika kuwa wazee, tulichukua hiyo jukumu ya face the challenges and we became better dads. And that's why we would encourage everybody that you can take the challenge and also become a good dad.
You said you have 4 girls. How different is it raising them and how your dad raised you?
I'm 3 to my 4 daughters, and actually I also have a granddaughter. So we interact very well. We communicate. Even right now they know where I am. We did text. I texted them and I told them I'll be live. So they are watching. And that kind of support whereby we communicate. So it is important as an intentional dad to communicate with your family. Members of the family, all of them know where I am. And they are watching, and even they have sent some comments. One comment is that even women has a responsibility of creating good children because they are the one who knows actually who the fathers are. They should bring the fathers on board and actually, whether they are separated or not, they should allow the children to know their fathers.
Asante sana Bwana Mutai. Lakini sasa kuna wengine ambao taswira yao kuhusiana na baba ni tofauti kidogo. Kuna wale ambao watakuwa sasa wanatueleza kuhusiana na uhusiano ambao wamekuwa nao wakiwa na mzazi mmoja ambaye ni mama. Labda nianze na mmoja hapa, Maxwell.
Thank you very much, Mashirima. Mnyendo Maxwell, an esteemed student leader at the Catholic University of South Africa, and an incoming MCA of East Wanga Ward, Kakamega County. Our society, as currently constituted, there has been an offsetting trend whereby mothers abandon the holy institutions of marriage and later to resurface and make hefty and lofty demands of maintenance fees and etc. So my
do you have a question or a comment?
I have a question to
go ahead, please ask your question.
I have a question to Wakili Kamulu. Which valid justification do we have both in law and in fact as to this worrying trend that has left most fathers disillusioned, disengaged, disenchanted and largely defenestrated? Thank you very much.
Nadhani taswira yake ama kauli yake ni kuhusiana na nikana kwamba na walaumu kina mama kwa kukosa ama kuondoka katika familia zao. Pastor Mbevi, labda unaweza kujibu kidogo kabla wakili ajibu.
I think what we are talking about here is relationships. And what we are saying, society and the growing up of children need to see good mothers and connect with them in relationship, because mothers have a contribution to the development of their children. The same with fathers, they have a contribution that they make to the development of their children. So I think what we are saying here is that whatever kind of family you find yourself in. I grew up without a father, and I longed to get those uncles and others to get involved, and I never got anyone. And that I had a lot of emotional challenges through it, until eventually a music teacher stepped in and began to do a modeling for me of masculinity and a relationship with me that eventually solved some of the developmental gaps that I had. So I think what we are saying here is that we are encouraging and celebrating the fathers who are engaged, because we are saying you have an important contribution to your children, just like mothers do, and we celebrate mothers. We're inviting the fathers and saying whatever has happened, whether it's divorce or separation or something else, and also calling the rest of the community to realize if children don't have a model of masculinity, that we should step in and be that community that raises both girls and boys in a way that they are fathered and mothered at the same time.
Okay, Marilyn, you also were asked to say something about a claim he made. He didn't give us the data to show that it's women are leaving and then coming back and claiming that they want to be maintained, but he has a question. What are your thoughts?
I think we are seeing a rise in separation and divorce. I don't think it's that out of step with what's happening around the world. I think it's going to continue to happen because the more women have choices about the lives that they live, the less likely they are to accept models that were framed around women having no choice.
Which
right?
is what you're saying was, in the past, women stayed because they had no options, even though
many women stayed because they had no
leave.
options. I'm not saying for all of them,
okay.
but I'm guessing a fair number of them wanted
Dr.
to
Carol
leave and couldn't, right?
In a sense, agree with you.
But the maintenance issue, and the reason why I think that this is an important one, especially in the context of this topic, is maintenance is often related to children. And again, this is where we really need to be very careful as adults to separate the relationship issues of the mother and the father in maybe in that instance, versus the issues of the child and the maintenance of a child. And so when we see the claims, and some of them, by the way, are really ridiculous. There are things around education, healthcare, food, right? When we find that parents, I'm even going to say parents, I'm not going to say fathers, parents are refusing to maintain children, that has to be something that as a society we can take a firm stand on and say that's not okay, right? And we need to be able to say we really don't want to know the issues around why the relationship split up.
Which is what he started with.
Yeah,
yes.
that's no longer relevant. What
Okay.
we're saying is there are children who are in this society now, and we owe them the obligation. As a society, our obligation is to make sure they are cared for.
Okay.
If their parents are not there, then we need to figure out as a society how to step in and care for them. But maintenance is not going to go away. And, you know, for men who may not want to have maintenance, there are lots of contraception options available.
Okay. She has taken
Then you have no risk.
one step further. Dr. Carol, Wale, we are coming to you shortly, but another question from the audience now.
Na nataka tu kumpatia nafasi Grace Nyambura aweze tu kutueleza jinsi maisha yake yalivyokuwa kulelewa tu na mama kwenye familia bila baba.
Asante sana Washirima. Jina langu ni Grace Nyambura Wanjiku. I was brought up by a single mom from Rwaka. The first challenge I had is that my father lived in the same locality that I was living with my mom, and so it was very challenging to know that everyone knows your father and you're just living with your mom and your dad can never be there to support you. So I feel like the absence of a dad in my life made me, you know, have some emotional and social risks, and it was hard for me to actually stabilize and socialize with people. It took me some years before I would regain myself and make a decision that despite what happened, I don't have any control and now it's my life. So I feel like the presence of a father would have made me know how to make some decisions. I will not have fallen into some decisions I made. Some decisions which I know were not good. And right now I know that even if it happened, I know how to manage myself because I have seen myself suffer and I have seen my mom struggle and I want the best for her.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Carol, I think this is a good place for you to come in. Is there a way to level the playing field? She says that she's been able to come out of that situation, but there were challenges. There are things she felt would have been easier.
Yeah.
How can we possibly level the playing field as a society?
Again, as a society, what we need to do is ask ourselves, what can we do together, to be able to create that right environment that a child needs? What she's talking about is such a reality because in my sessions, 90% pretty much have a child-related issue. So you come there at 10 or 20 or 25, it always goes back to the experiences in your childhood. And what we are seeing more and more, now that we are becoming so individualistic, then we are also still losing those ties. So to level the playing field, for me, means that we need to really rethink, rethink the individualistic perspectives or ways of living that we have now so that we can go back to the connections that we used to have. Those are the connections that cause children to thrive. She was able to to work through it, but not everyone is able to do that. And that's where therapy may come in. That's why, other ways of supporting yourself, like personal development classes and things like that, may come in.
Okay. And while before we take that break, there are some viewers on social media who've actually weighed in and say, you know what, if you want to level the playing field, open it up. Polygamy, one possible option. There are many ways to look at this. What would you say about looking at radical ways, quote unquote, to be able to counter some of the challenges that she has so well spoken of?
I think I'm not that radical yet. But I think we all need to take ownership. You see, I'll give you an analogy. If you have a mango tree, okay, and has a mango fruit that is ripe, and you don't pluck it when it is ripe, it gets ripe, falls to the ground, gets overripe, breeds flies, breeds diseases. A lot of young people, I want us to see them like that fruit. If we don't step in to harvest, to mentor, to love, to teach, when they're at a particular stage, then they become overripe. And what happens? They become the criminals. They become all these things we're talking about. So I think it is very crucial. Many times we step back and say, government needs to do this, government needs to do that. But the truth is this: when we don't step in as citizens to get involved in these people. I live very far away from Madare, but I have hundreds of kids who call me daddy. Why? Because we step in and we need to see them not for who they are, but for who they can be. And we begin to treat them. It's collective responsibility.
It's collective responsibility. Okay, I think that's a good place to take a break, Mashirima.
Na kabla ya kuchukua tu mapumziko, nataka tu kusoma baadhi ya jumbe ambazo zimetumwa hapa. Truth Meter ya Kenya anasema, I'm a product of a single mother. Lacking a father figure changed my perception towards life. It made me realize I have a chance to be the best family man and dad that I always wished for. Kuna mwingine hapa anaitwa CKIMK. Anasema, I agree there could be a problem, but the biggest problem is how Kenyan women incite children against their fathers, trying to win the children's hearts. Tunapumzika kidogo, tutarejea hivi punde. Usiondoke.